They didn't know the name of the land. They didn't ask. The sea had given them a shore. That was enough. Ragnar stood barefoot in the surf, salt in his wounds, blood on his hands. But he was alive. Beside him, Athelstan, quiet, pale, watching the tree line. No sails, no ship, only two men and a prayer neither one believed in. The first to find them were not warriors, farmers, cautious, armed. They spoke a broken tongue. Athelstan understood pieces. Ragnar understood silence. They pointed, asked, waited. Ragnar said only one thing. We came from the sea, and the farmers nodded. As if that explained everything. They stayed in a hut made of stone and fear. A fire, a blanket, enough. Ragnar didn't sleep. He carved a symbol into the wall a dragon's eye, to prove they'd been here. Athelstan asked, "Do you think they'll trust us?" "No," said Ragnar, "but they haven't killed us yet." On the second night she came. Dark hair, scar across the jaw, eyes like ice before it cracks. She asked no name. Gave none, only one question. "Why are you here?" Ragnar answered. "I lost everything." She didn't blink, then turned and walked away. Later, they were invited to a fire, a gathering, men, women, children all staring too long. They gave food, root stew, cold bread. No one spoke of gods, only of storms, and the things that came after them. Ragnar listened. Athelstan translated. When they asked for a story, Ragnar said, "I had 4 sons in a dream. Only one lived. I don't know which." And then he went silent. So did everyone else. That night something changed. The fire burned low. The wind stopped. No birds, no dogs, just stillness. Then a shadow. Then another. Figures in the trees. Painted faces. Rusted blades. Not from the village. Ira, that was her name, drew a knife. "They're not here to fight," she said. "They're here to remind us." "Remind you of what?" Ragnar asked. "That we are small." A flaming arrow hit the dirt, then another. Screams, running. Axes raised too late. Ragnar didn't flinch. He walked toward the trees. One attacker ran. Another fell. The third, a boy, stopped, terrified, breathing like a cornered animal. Ragnar grabbed him. "This isn't your home." The boy nodded. "No, but it might be soon." By dawn, they were gone. No bodies, just blood, footprints, smoke. Ira sat on the hill, staring at the forest. "They'll come again," she said. Ragnar looked toward the sea. "Let them." Athelstan stood beside him. "This place, it doesn't have kings." Ragnar nodded. "Good. Then what does it need?" Ragnar looked at the fire, a reason to burn. The morning after the fire, the sky stayed gray. Not angry, not kind. Just watching. The villagers worked in silence, putting out embers, burying ash. No one spoke of the attackers. No one asked who died. They already knew. Ragnar walked the field alone. Charred grass, broken arrows. One boot, half buried in mud. He picked it up, held it for a moment, then dropped it again, as if the land should keep the memory. Athelstan stood by the hut. His hands were red from helping. Head stopped praying. Now he listened. "Do they mourn?" he asked Ira. "No," she said. "They rebuild." "What about vengeance?" Ira looked at him. "That comes later." The scarred boy Ragnar captured still hadn't spoken. He sat, tied near the goat shed. Head down, mouth shut, eyes open. Floki crouched beside him. "You've got death in your hair," he said. The boy said nothing. Floki grinned. "Good, you'll fit right in. Later." Ira led Ragnar up the hill. No words, just wind. At the top, a circle of stones. Burned black, old bones at the center. Not fresh, not arranged, scattered. Forgotten. "This is where they come from," she said. Ragnar knelt, touched the dirt. It was cold, but not dead. "How long has this been happening?" "Years," she said. "And you've done nothing?" "I've done everything I could." He looked at her, not with judgment, with recognition. "You know you can't stop them." "No," she said, "but you don't run either." That night, the boy finally spoke, to Athelstan, not Ragnar. They send us with nothing, he whispered. Just blades, just hate. Athelstan nodded. And if you return, they break us again, until we can't return. Ragnar listened from the doorway. He didn't interrupt. He understood more in silence than in words. When Athelstan came out, he said, "Will you let him go?" Ragnar shook his head. "No, but I'll let him walk." At dawn, Ragnar untied the boy, handed him a stick. "Not a sword, not a threat. Go west," he said. "Farther than your masters can follow." The boy stared at him. "You don't kill me?" "No. Why? Because they want me to." Eira watched from the fence. "You think hell'll change?" "No," said Ragnar. "But maybe the next one will." They spent the rest of the day preparing, reinforcing the fences, sharpening blades, boiling water, drying meat. Not because war was coming, but because life never stopped. Not here, not anymore. Athelstan walked with the children. He taught them Latin words for trees, sky, fire. They laughed, not because they understood, but because he tried. And that was rare. Floki sat near the shore, carving faces into driftwood. "I don't like this place," he said. Ragnar sat beside him. "I don't either." "Too quiet?" "No, too honest." Floki nodded. "They still bleed, though. That's good." That night, a horn sounded in the dark. Not far, not near. One note, held too long. Eira rose. "That's not them," she said. Ragnar stood. "Then who?" She didn't answer. Because deep in the trees, a light moved. Not flame, a torch. Carried by someone who walked like they owned the dark. The villagers froze. Axes lifted. Breath held. And then a voice. Rough. Deep. Too calm. "Send me the one from the sea." Ragnar stepped forward. He didn't ask who. He just walked into the night. Toward the voice. Toward the torch. Toward the unknown. Again. The torch didn't flicker. Not in the wind. Not in the night. It burned straight as if held by someone who feared nothing. Ragnar walked alone. No blade. No shield. Only the cold breath of the forest. And the weight of being seen. The man stood in a clearing. Tall. Wrapped in furs. Face hidden by a hood, but the voice was clear. "You're him." "I might be," Ragnar said. "The one they talk about. The Seaman." "The Firebringer." Ragnar didn't answer. The man stepped closer. "They fear you." "Good," Ragnar said. "I've earned that." They circled one another, slow. Not threatening, measuring. "You come here, half dead, with a priest and no crown. You bury your name under ash, and yet you know it." Ragnar replied. The man nodded. "Because men like you don't stay quiet long." His name was Halvard, a chieftain, he said, of the North Woods. "Of 10 villages, or what was left of them. The ones who attacked you," he said. "They serve no god, no king, only fire." "And you?" Ragnar asked. "I serve no one." That made Ragnar pause. "Not even yourself?" Halvard smiled, a mouth with too many scars. "I served once. Now I watch." They sat by a cold fire pit. No flame, only the memory of one. Halvard tossed Ragnar a piece of meat. "Dried wolf," he said. "Don't ask which part." Ragnar ate. "I thought you came to threaten me." Halvard shook his head. "No, I came to see if you're real, and you're too quiet to be a liar." Back at the village, Athelstan waited. He stood beside Eira. "You trust him?" he asked. "No," she said, "but Ragnar does. And that's worse." Halvard spoke of the woods, of tribes turned to smoke, of children taken, of rites performed beneath dead trees. "They believe death is owed," he said, "not feared, not delayed." Ragnar watched the trees. "And what do you believe?" Halvard looked at the sky. "That death is deaf, but blood remembers." He handed Ragnar a stone. Carved, blackened, a sigil, 3 teeth in a circle. "Their mark," Halvard said. "If you see it on your door, you run. And if I don't run, then you won't run again." They returned at dawn. The village stirred. Children peeked from doorways. Men gripped spears tighter. Halvard walked through them like smoke. No greetings, no explanations. Just presence. He stopped at the center fire. "You've seen the edge?" He said to the people. "You know what waits." No one spoke, so fight, or follow. Or burn. Later, Era pulled Ragnar aside. "His dangerous." "So am I," Ragnar said, "but you don't pretend not to be." Floki carved the sigil into a piece of bark. "3 teeth," he whispered. "3 gods?" "Athelstan says it means consume," Ragnar said. Floki laughed. "Then let's feed them something sharp." That night they lit no fires. Only shadows moved, and Ragnar, at the edge of the village, looked out toward the trees, where something was watching. Something not hungry, not angry, just waiting. The next morning came with no sun, only mist. It moved low across the ground, coiling around boots, curling into doors. The villagers worked slower, spoke softer, as if something in the fog might hear. Ragnar stood at the tree line, Halvard beside him. They watched the fog, both silent. Finally, Ragnar asked, "How long before they come?" Halvard didn't turn. "They're already here." They found the mark at dusk, carved into the bark of an old elm. 3 teeth, burned deep, still warm. Athelstan ran his fingers over it. "This is a warning." "No," said Halvard. "It's a promise." Ragnar gathered the village. No stage, no speeches. Just a circle of bodies and one truth between them. It was time to choose. Stay, fight, burn, flee. Hide, pray, each choice had a cost. Ragnar pointed to the woods. "This ends one of 2 ways," he said. "We bury them, or they bury us." One man asked, "But what if they don't want land?" "They don't." Ragnar answered, "They want memory." Era stood, sword at her side. "No one's coming to save us," she said. No one expected they would. Floki and a group of men dug pits near the path, lined them with sharpened stakes. Others gathered oil, stones, broken tools to become weapons, even the old ones, even the children. They had no choice. That night, the boy returned, the one Ragnar had spared. He walked alone, barefoot, bleeding. They almost killed him before he reached the fire, but Ragnar stopped them. The boy fell to his knees. "They know," he gasped. "They know you're here." "Who?" Ragnar asked. The boy trembled, the hollowed. Floki flinched. "That name's older than smoke." Athelstan looked to the woods, older than gods. They gave the boy water, bound his feet, let him speak. He told stories that sounded like lies, of men who wore ash like armor, of voices in the dirt, of sacrifices taken, not given. No one interrupted. Because they knew. It didn't matter if it was true. It was happening. Halvard sat with Ragnar after. They didn't talk of the stories, only strategy. "Will they come at night?" "No," said Halvard. "They like you to see. In the dark." Ragnar sharpened his axe. Athelstan watched. "You're not the same man who landed here," he said. "I'm exactly the same." Ragnar answered, "You just didn't see it before, the fog didn't lift." Even the stars stayed hidden. Somewhere in the woods, a horn sounded once, then twice. Not loud, but final. The wind shifted, and every fire in the village bent westward. Ragnar stood, Era at his left, Floki at his right, Halvard behind them. He looked at Athelstan. "Stay with the children." The monk shook his head. "I've seen too many gods fall. I want to see what rises." They moved toward the tree line. Quiet. Not to hunt, to wait. Because when the hollowed came, they did not charge. They walked, dozens, then hundreds. Faces pale, eyes black, blades dull and wet, and in front of them, a man with no mouth, just a crown of bone. He raised one hand. Not to command, to welcome. Ragnar stepped forward. "This is our land now." The man said nothing, but the fog surged behind him like breath. And then, he pointed at Ragnar's chest, not as threat, but recognition. And the hollowed began to move. They didn't run. No one moved. The hollowed stepped forward in silence, not as soldiers, as ghosts. Fog curled around their feet, swallowing the earth behind them. Ragnar gripped his axe tighter. His breath didn't shake. His hands didn't tremble, but his eyes, they burned, not from fear. From knowing that this was no longer a raid. This was history breaking through the trees. The man with the crown of bone did not speak. He didn't need to. His presence was a command, his silence a scream. Floki whispered, "That's not a man." Ragnar replied, "Then well, teach him how men die." The first clash came fast, no warning. One of the villagers stepped too close. A hollowed moved like smoke, blade catching moonlight, and the man fell. No sound, just red. Ragnar didn't shout. He moved. So did Era. So did Halvard. Like wolves off the chain. The trap pits held. 3 hollowed fell before the rest noticed. Oil burned, arrows flew. But they kept coming. Slow, endless, as if the forest itself had grown legs. Athelstan guarded the children. He prayed once soft, fast, then grabbed a spear. A hollowed broke through the fence. Athelstan stabbed, missed, stabbed again. It fell. He didn't cheer. He just breathed and kept standing. Ragnar fought near the fire circle. Bodies dropped at his feet. The fog turned red. He saw Floki take a blade to the shoulder. Floki laughed, bit the attacker, used the wound to anchor his madness. Then a scream. From the hill, a torch flared. A warning. Ragnar looked up. More. Another second line of hollowed, cresting the hill like a tide. Behind them, not warriors, figures dragging chains, something heavy. "Something alive," Halvard shouted. "Pull back, behind the stone line." They moved, fast, tight, shields to the front, blades ready. The chained figure reached the edge of the village. It stood tall, taller than a man, covered in cloth, blood seeping from beneath. Then it knelt and began to pray. The ground cracked, flames burst from the soil, and the hollowed roared. Not in anger, in joy, Ragnar charged, straight into the fire. Era followed. Halvard held the line. Athelstan ran with the children to the far barn, sealing the door. Inside, he said one word, "Wait." Outside, chaos. The praying thing rose, limbs too long, eyes sealed shut. It moved toward Ragnar. He threw his axe. It hit, no effect. Only more blood, more heat. The thing opened its arms, as if to bless him. He dove, rolled, grabbed a fallen spear, and drove it into its chest. It didn't scream, it whispered. A name, not his. Bjorn. The fog cracked, only for a second. Enough for Ragnar to see the man with the bone crown gone. Vanished. The hollowed began to fall back. Still silent, still smiling. Retreating like the tide that already claimed the shore. By dawn, smoke. The dead were counted. 17 lost, 5 children wounded. Floki stood, half-burned, grinning. Halvard sat, blade in lap, silent. Era wept not loud. Just enough to remember. And Ragnar. Ragnar walked through the village, looking for one thing, a sign, a name, a reason. Because whatever this was. It wasn't over, not yet. The village didn't speak for a day. Smoke still rose from the earth, not flames, just heat. Leftovers of something older than war. Children stared without blinking. Old men stared with too much knowing. Everyone else moved to fix. To bury, to forget. As if motion could undo memory. Ragnar didn't sleep. He stood by the broken fence. Watched the mist crawl back toward the trees. He didn't blink. He didn't speak. He just waited. For what, he didn't know. Maybe for the world to tell him this was real. Maybe for it to say it wasn't. Floki's wound festered. He didn't complain. He sang nonsense songs. About wolves in the river. About fire with teeth. Ira stitched him without words. When she finished, he looked at her and whispered, "Something followed us back." She said nothing. Because she knew. Athelstan prayed again. Not loudly, not publicly. Alone, inside the barn, between 2 sleeping children. His voice cracked. Not from fear, from guilt. He had killed. He had watched others die. He had prayed to a god who said nothing. Still he prayed. Because silence was better than screaming. Halvard gathered what remained of his men. 6 out of 20. He marked their foreheads with ash, then sat with Ragnar beneath the ruined tree. They didn't win, he said. Ragnar didn't look at him. No, he replied, but neither did we. Halvard nodded. They never come to take. They come to leave. To leave what? Fear. That night, Ira brought Ragnar food. He didn't eat. She sat beside him, arms crossed, eyes on the stars. You fought like a man who doesn't want to come back, she said. I didn't, he answered. She nodded. Do you now? He turned to her. I don't know how. The boy, the one Ragnar had once spared, helped bury the dead. He said nothing, only dug, hour after hour, until his hands bled. Athelstan tried to stop him. The boy refused. I was supposed to be one of them, he said. But I wasn't good enough. That means you were good enough, Athelstan answered. The boy didn't reply. He just kept digging. Ragnar lit a new fire in the center of the village. No feast. No story. Just flame and silence. People gathered. Not for warmth, but for proof that they were still here, still breathing, still more than ash. Floki approached Ragnar that night. He was limping now, but his eyes still burned. We bled to keep this place, he said. And we will bleed again. Ragnar stared into the fire. What if we can't win? Floki smiled. Then we'll lose louder than they ever imagined. Later, alone. Ragnar carved into stone. Not runes, not names, just lines. Thick, jagged, unfinished. Marks that meant nothing. Or maybe everything. Maybe memory, maybe prophecy, maybe warning. And as the night deepened, the wind returned. Carrying no words, no horns, no footsteps. Only the faint smell of smoke. And the echo of something still watching, still waiting, still coming. The fog had lifted, but the air still carried weight. Like the land was holding its breath. No attacks came. No sounds from the trees, only quiet. And quiet was worse. Because everyone knew what it meant. They were waiting. Ragnar walked the edge of the village at dawn, one step at a time. As if testing the ground for truth. He passed the broken fence, the burial pit, the blood that hadn't washed away. He didn't speak, didn't stop. Only paused at the farthest point where trees began again, and whispered, Come then. Halvard began drawing maps in the dirt. They come from here, he said, pointing north. And here, he added, circling a river bend. And from nowhere, Floki crouched beside him. How do you fight nowhere? You burn it, Halvard said. Floki grinned. I like you more than I should. Athelstan taught the children to move without sound, to follow shadows, to hide where wind couldn't touch them. He didn't smile. He just watched their feet, their posture, their fear. You'll be safe, he told them. He didn't believe it, but they did, and that was enough. The boy, still nameless, began speaking in sleep. Short phrases, repeating. They're in the roots, he murmured. They're inside the trees. Ragnar listened, then covered the boy's mouth with his hand, not to silence him, to remind him he was alive. Era trained at the riverbank, every day, sword. Breath, repeat. She didn't talk much anymore, only moved. When Ragnar approached, she paused. You still want to leave? She asked. I don't know where to go, he said. She nodded. Then maybe you've already gone. That night the ground shook, not loud, not sharp. Just enough to remind the village that the earth too could be uncertain. A crack formed near the fire pit, thin, black, breathing warmth. Floki stared at it for hours, said nothing, but carved it into his arm. Halvard called a gathering, no speeches, only a question. Do we strike first? Some nodded, some looked away. Ragnar said, we don't know where to hit. Halvard pointed to the trees. Then we aim for the dark. By morning, a hunting party formed. Ragnar, Halvard, Era, Floki. 2 others quiet, fast. Athelstan stayed behind. I'm not built for forest war, he said. You're built for something else, Ragnar replied. What? To remember, they moved fast. No horses, no fires, only foot and frost and breath. They followed trails too faint to be trails. Marks that weren't quite real, but real enough to chase. Until a clearing and a stone circle, not natural, not new, at its center. Bones, stacked, burned, arranged in the shape of a mouth. Wide open, Floki stepped forward, touched the stones. They were warm. Not from sun, from something else. He whispered, "It's not a grave." Ragnar asked, "Then what?" Floki stood. A door. They didn't go back that night. They camped near the river. No fire, no talking. Only thoughts too loud for comfort. Ragnar sat with his back to a tree, eyes open. He watched the moon, and when a branch cracked nearby softly, slowly he didn't move. He just said, "If it's you, come closer." Nothing answered. Not yet. The clearing didn't change overnight. The bones stayed stacked. The circle remained still, but the wind, it shifted, less like breath, more like whisper. Ragnar didn't sleep. He sat with his back against a tree, axe across his knees, eyes locked on the stone mouth. Era watched too. She didn't speak, neither did he. Because some things even silence should not be broken. At dawn, Halvard walked the circle. He counted each stone, 31, uneven, jagged. Marked with notches too small for age, too fresh for time. "This is new," he said. "Or old," Floki offered, but fed. Halvard frowned. "Fed what?" Floki smiled. "Us. They found the first body at noon, half buried under moss, skin stretched tight, eyes gone. Lips stitched with root, not hollowed, not local, something in between." Era knelt. "He was killed to be seen," she said. Ragnar nodded. "Then we see." Athelstan back in the village began to draw. Lines, shapes, mouths. He didn't know why. He just felt the need. The children brought him charcoal, asked him questions. He gave no answers, because he didn't have them. Only visions, only warnings. The hunting party moved deeper, north, past the stone mouth, into woods that didn't breathe, trees bent inward. Ground too soft, air thick with rot and memory. Halvard whispered, "We're not welcome." Ragnar said, "Good." By nightfall they found the hill, small, bald, crowned with something not built grown, wood shaped like bone, bone shaped like law. At the center a figure, bent, cloaked, moving without walking, not man, not God. Something that had waited too long to be one or the other. It turned. A face without eyes, just skin, pulled tight, mouth sewn with thread. But it spoke, in their heads, not loud, but final. "You remember me?" Ragnar stepped forward. "No," he said. "But I've killed things that thought I should." The voice echoed again. "You stand on stolen earth." Halvard raised his spear. "We bled to earn it. Blood does not buy. Blood opens." Era moved beside Ragnar. "What are you?" The figure tilted its head. "What you forget." Floki dropped to one knee, touched the soil. It pulsed, faint, like a drum too far away. He whispered, "This land isn't cursed, it's hungry." Then the wind screamed, not howled. Screamed. The trees bent, the ground split, and from beneath the roots hands. Thin, long, covered in ash, dozens, then more. The hollowed were not coming, they were being born. Ragnar turned. "We leave." Halvard hesitated. "This is our chance." "No," said Ragnar. "This is someone else's war, and we're already losing ours." They fled through the trees. Branches tore skin. Shadows chased breath, but they didn't look back. They didn't need to. Because the forest was changing, closing, and behind them, the hill will forget me again. But Ragnar whispered back, "I never forget what tries to kill me." They didn't speak as they ran, not from fear, from instinct. Words would slow the body, and this land did not forgive hesitation. By the time they reached the edge of the village, the sun was gone. The air was colder, the trees closer. Ragnar didn't pause. He went straight to the fence, looked beyond it, and waited. Era collapsed beside a barrel, breathing hard, her blade still in hand. Knuckles white. Halvard dropped to one knee. He pressed a palm to the ground, Still warm, still moving. They're not behind us, he said. Ragnar shook his head. No, they're beneath us. Athelstan came from the barn. Children clustered behind him. He saw their faces bloodied, cut, alive. What happened? Ragnar stared at him. The forest is no longer a place. It's a door. To what? To something that doesn't need one. They gathered that night, all of them. Around a fire too small for the weight in the air. Ragnar stood, said nothing for a long time. Then finally, they're not coming. They've already come. Floki stirred the fire with a stick. Then why aren't they killing us? Because they want us to be afraid first. Ira said. They want us to rot, Halvard added. Ragnar nodded. They want us hollow, the villagers murmured. One asked if they should leave. Ragnar looked at the trees. If we leave, we carry them with us. What if we stay? Then we learn what kind of fire we are. Athelstan walked to the edge of the group, looked at the sky. No stars. No wind, only silence that listened. He turned to Ragnar. I saw them, he said. Before we knew. In dreams? No. He touched his chest. In here. The boy, the one with no name, stood at the fire's edge. His eyes were darker than before. Not evil, just emptied. They speak to me, he said. No one laughed. What do they say? Ragnar asked. They say I'm the only one who remembers. Remembers what? The boy looked up. You, Floki leaned in. What does he mean? I don't know, Ragnar said. But I'm starting to believe him. That night, strange things began. Small things, shadows in places without light, fires going cold for no reason. Children waking with ash under their fingernails. No one screamed. Not yet. But no one slept either. Halvard posted watchmen. Every hour. 3 never returned. 1 came back laughing. Blood on his hands. Not his own, he wouldn't say a word. Just kept laughing, until his mouth bled. Ira sharpened 10 blades that night. Not for war, for choice. If they take the mind, she said, I want steel to take the rest. Ragnar didn't argue. He sharpened his own slower, not for readiness. For rhythm. At dawn, Athelstan awoke to find a single word scratched into the door. Return, he showed Ragnar. Ragnar didn't blink. I never left. Floki came with news. The river was red, not blood, iron, thick, heavy, smelling of rust and time. And something was floating toward them. Not a boat. Not a body. A piece of stone, with one mark. The mouth, open again, waiting. It floated for hours, the stone. Heavy, dark, etched with the mouth. No one touched it. They just watched, as it bumped against the rocks. Spun in the current, refused to sink. Ragnar stood on the shore. Arms crossed, silent, watching. He didn't speak until the others arrived. Eira, Halvard, Floki, Athelstan. They formed a line behind him. He finally said, It remembers us. Floki crouched near the edge, flicked a bit of water toward his tongue, sniffed it. Not just iron. What else? Halvard asked. Floki grinned. Memory. Athelstan closed his eyes. He heard whispers, not words, just fragments, syllables of pain. Laughter too long, breathing that didn't come from lungs. He stepped back. They know we saw, he said. Ragnar nodded. And now they want to see us. They pulled the stone from the water. Ragnar and Halvard lifted it together. It was warm, heavy in a wrong way. Like it didn't weigh what it should, but what it meant. They placed it in the center of the village. No one argued. Not even the old ones. It belonged there now, like it always had. That night, the dreams changed. Everyone had them. No faces, no fire, just water. Deep. Endless, speaking. Some woke crying, some woke screaming. Some didn't wake at all. One man walked into the river before sunrise. Didn't say a word, didn't stop. He walked until the current took him. They never found his body, only his boots, placed neatly on the shore. Ragnar stayed near the stone. He slept beside it, axe on his chest. Eyes half open, Eira came to him. You think it's watching? No, he said. It's remembering. What? He looked at her. Everything we forgot. The boy sat beside Athelstan. He was shaking. "They're coming again," he whispered. "How do you know?" "They said I would tell you." "Who?" The boy blinked slowly. "The ones in the river. That day, 3 children found a dead bird. Its beak sealed shut with ash, its feathers carved with runes." Athelstan read them, 4 symbols, old, lost. He could only translate 2, give, return. Halvard ordered trenches dug, deeper than before. Ragnar didn't stop him. They were not preparing for battle now, they were preparing for erosion. Because this fight, it wasn't about land anymore, it was about weight. The weight of being remembered, or erased. Floki painted symbols on his chest. Not runes, shapes from his dreams. He didn't explain. He didn't need to. Because every man had begun to feel the pull. The river wasn't water anymore. It was voice, it was mouth, it was mirror. Ragnar carved a message into the base of the stone. Not for gods, not for men. For himself. Only he could read it. And when he finished, he bled on it. Just once, just enough. At sunset, the water turned black. The current slowed. And in its reflection, they didn't see the sky. They saw faces. Not their own. Not hollowed. Something older. Something hungry. And Ragnar, standing at the edge, whispered, "Not yet." The river stopped on the 3rd day. Not slowed. Not frozen. Stopped. No sound. No movement. Like time had been folded and placed under stone. Ragnar stood on the bank before sunrise, alone. The sky above was red, though no fire had burned. The mist had thickened. He could hear his heartbeat, but not the world. He knelt, touched the surface, still warm, too warm, like breath, like waiting. Athelstan approached, quiet as always. He looked down, saw nothing, only his reflection. But when he blinked, it changed. Not his face. Ragnar's. But older. Burned. Mouth sewn shut. He staggered back. "They're showing us things," Ragnar nodded. "Or reminding us." Back in the village, a dog began to bark. Then stopped. Then barked again. But not at something. At nothing. Floki watched. He carved the movement into wood. An animal in a cage made of trees. He held it up to the boy. "Tell me what this is." The boy stared, then whispered, "Me." Halvard sat sharpening his sword, each motion slow, precise, as if the metal might remember what it needed to cut. He didn't look up when Ragnar approached. "They won't wait much longer," he said. "I know," Ragnar replied. "They're letting us choose." "What? How we die?" That night, the villagers came to the stone, not to pray, not to curse. To decide. They spoke in whispers. Some cried. Some dug their nails into their palms. The air felt full. Not heavy, not hot. Full. Like someone else was breathing with them. Watching from inside the stone. Era broke the silence. We're not leaving. No one argued. Even those who had once begged to run stayed still. Ragnar said, "Then we need to stop waiting for the flood." He pointed to the river. "To end this, we go where they are." Floki volunteered first. "I want to see what made the dreams." The boy raised his hand second. Era placed hers on the hilt of her blade. Athelstan hesitated, then nodded. "I'll go." Halvard stood last. "If we don't come back, burn the village." Ragnar looked at him. "No," he said. "Wait 3 days. If we don't return, follow." Halvard didn't flinch. "Into the river?" Into the dark, they built a raft, tied from old wood. Bones, rope, big enough for 5. No torches. Only one small oil lamp. It burned blue, the color of lies. At dawn, they stepped onto the raft. The water moved again, soft, slow, like it approved. The villagers watched in silence. No cheers, no goodbyes, only breath, and the sound of water parting like truth. As they drifted away, the fog swallowed them. The river narrowed, then widened again. Banks disappeared, only black on both sides, no sky, no stars. Just dark that breathed, and then whispers, around them, not in words, in names. Names of people who were dead. Some they had known, some they had killed, some they had never met, and one name repeated, soft, Endless. Ragnar, Ragnar, Ragnar. He didn't speak, but his hand tightened on the axe. In the distance, they saw light, not fire. A glow beneath the water, a shape, a stairwell carved in stone, rising from the riverbed like a tooth. Floki said, "I think we found the mouth again." Era grinned. "Then let's open it." The water held them, not like a river, like a hand. The raft drifted toward the stone stair. It rose from the black like bone through mud. No one spoke. Even Floki stayed silent. Because this wasn't discovery, this was trespass. The steps were dry. Too dry. No moss, no algae, no rot. Just stone, unbroken, old, as if time itself had been pushed back. Ragnar stepped first. His foot landed with a hollow sound, like stepping onto memory. They climbed. Downward. Though the stairs rose, the air grew thicker, then thinner. Light faded, but never left. The deeper they went, the brighter it became. Not sunlight, not flame, something older, something beneath those things. Athelstan stopped at the 5th landing. He touched the wall, whispered, "I've seen this in a dream." Ragnar looked at the carving, a mouth, open. Inside it a star. Floki laughed once, soft, fast. Either we're in a god or we're in its throat. Era moved on without comment. Her blade scraped the wall. It left no mark. That made her frown. "I don't like things that don't bleed." At the bottom, they found the chamber. Circular, smooth, empty, except for a single figure kneeling. Wrapped in ash-colored cloth. No face, no hands, just presence. Waiting, it didn't turn. But it spoke. Not with voice. "You've come late." Space. Ragnar stepped forward. "Who are you?" The figure didn't move. "The first question." Athelstan whispered, "That's not an answer." "Because answers are earned." Era raised her blade. "I don't like riddles." The figure said nothing, but the walls answered. They pulsed, not sound, but feeling. The weight of centuries exhaled, and the floor opened. Not collapsed, opened. They fell, not far, but long, not down, but inward. The world bent, and then they stood, in another room. This one alive. Veins pulsed in the walls, roots moved in the ceiling. At the center, a mirror of water, still. Silent, clearer than air. Ragnar stepped to it. He saw not his reflection, but a child, a boy, alone, surrounded by fire. He blinked. Floki looked and saw nothing. Athelstan looked and wept. Era looked and gripped her blade tighter. No one spoke. They didn't need to. Because the mirror had shown them what mattered most. And what might be taken next. Then the figure appeared again, now walking. Still silent, it circled them, not like prey, like preparation. The hollow do not serve. They remember, and what remembers can become. Ragnar stepped forward. No more signs, no more riddles. The figure stopped. Its cloth began to burn. No flame, just smoke. Peeling away, beneath it bone, but not dead. Alive, and in its mouth no tongue, only stone, carved, with his name, Ragnar. He didn't move, didn't blink, only asked, "Why me?" The answer came not from the figure, but the floor beneath him. It whispered, "Because you remember what others bury." The stone in the figure's mouth didn't glow. It pulsed, slow, steady, like a heart carved wrong. Ragnar stared at it, at his name, etched in lines he didn't remember drawing. He didn't speak, because now he understood. This wasn't a warning, it was a mirror. Athelstan stepped forward. "Is this prophecy?" The figure's skull turned. Not toward him, toward the mirror, as if to say, "Look deeper." Athelstan did, and saw a field, covered in snow, filled with bodies. All had his face. Era watched. Her eyes didn't blink. Her sword didn't lower. She didn't trust what doesn't bleed, but she trusted Ragnar, and he hadn't moved. That scared her more than the walls. Floki laughed, low, broken. He approached the figure, poked its ribs. "You wear the dead to teach the living?" He leaned closer. "I already learned everything worth knowing. The figure turned, and Floki staggered back, because behind the skull, he saw his own face. Burned, mouth open, screaming, the mirror rippled, not from movement. From memory, it showed Ragnar again, but not as he was. As he once believed he'd be. Crowned, alone, older, holding a sword made of bone and breath. He whispered, "I didn't ask for this." The chamber replied, "But you remembered it." He looked at Athelstan. "What do they want?" "They don't want," the monk said. "They reflect." Ragnar frowned. "Then what's the threat?" Athelstan looked at the mirror. "The threat is what we'll become if we don't turn away." Era walked to the mirror, looked in, saw nothing. Then, a child, not Bjorn, not her own, but someone she'd never met, crying, covered in blood, calling her name. She stepped back. Enough. The room grew colder. The figure sat now, kneeling, like it had always been, like it had never moved. Floki whispered, "We've gone nowhere." Ragnar answered, "Because we haven't finished." He turned to the figure. "What happens if we leave?" "The door remembers. And if we stay, you become it." Ragnar looked at his hands. Scars, burns, tremble, but still strong, still his. He walked to the mirror, kneeling, touched the surface. This time it gave, not water, not glass, but skin, warm, breathing, his. He pulled back, looked at the others. "We leave, now." They didn't question it. They turned. The room didn't stop them. The figure didn't move. But as they climbed the stairs, the light faded. One step at a time, and with it, names, not theirs. Theirs stayed, but others. Forgotten. By the time they reached the raft, the river was gone, in its place. A path of stone, as if it had always been there. As if the water had been illusion, or memory, or warning. They walked. Behind them, the mouth closed, without sound, without echo, as if it had never been open at all. They walked back in silence. No wind, no birds, no sound but their steps. Even Floki stopped humming. The forest did not breathe them in. It let them pass, and that was worse. When they reached the edge of the village, the sun was out. But nothing felt warm. The air was dry, too dry. Like the world had been scrubbed clean, erased. Halvard stood waiting at the gate. He didn't move when they approached. Didn't smile, didn't speak, just stared at Ragnar, then said, "You were gone for 2 days," Ragnar replied. "We never left." The villagers gathered, silent, watching. Their eyes didn't recognize the ones who returned, because something had shifted, not in shape, in presence. The kind of change no one admits out loud, but everyone feels. Ragnar looked around. The riverbed was dry. The stone in the center was gone. No footprints, no ash, just a stillness that said, "We were never here." Athelstan dropped to his knees, hands in the dust. He prayed again, but the words were strange now. Not Latin, not Norse, something in between. The boy came to him, placed a hand on his shoulder. "They're not done," he said. Athelstan didn't answer. He couldn't. That night the fires burned low. No feast. No talk, just food and silence. Floki stared into his bowl, carved new runes into the table. When asked what they meant, he said, "They don't mean anything yet." Era sat with her back to the wall, sword unsheathed, eyes on the horizon. She hadn't spoken since the mirror. Ragnar approached, sat beside her. She said, "I saw something in that room." "I know," he replied. "I don't think it was a lie. I know that too." She nodded, then added, "Will you tell Bjorn?" Ragnar didn't answer, because he wasn't sure what there was to tell. Halvard lit a torch and walked the perimeter. He touched each post, each stone, each scar. He whispered to the trees, not threats, not prayers. Names, old ones, forgotten ones. He didn't expect an answer. But he spoke them anyway, because someone had to remember. Ragnar climbed the hill above the village, alone. He looked down at the homes, at the fires, at the people still trying to believe this was life. He thought of kings, of crowns, of gods, of mouths that spoke no words, but left meaning behind. And then, he closed his eyes and saw the mirror again, not the reflection. The shape. It had not been a pool, it had been an eye. And it had not been showing him something, it had been watching. He whispered to no one, "You're still here." And the wind, soft now, answered, "So are you." 3 days passed. No attacks, no dreams, no sounds from the trees. Even the river remained silent, a black scar with no current. And the people tried. They planted, patched roofs, smiled at children. But their eyes said what their mouths did not. Nothing was gone, only quiet. Ragnar wandered the village with empty hands. No axe, no shield. Just silence around him. The villagers bowed their heads, not in respect, in caution. As if speaking his name aloud might stir the thing that watched him now. Floki had stopped laughing. He spent each morning rebuilding a fence that didn't need fixing. He said it kept something out, or maybe kept something in. When Athelstan asked him which, Floki whispered, "I haven't decided." The boy had begun drawing, on walls, on bark, on the dirt near sleeping goats. Mouths, eyes, shapes that turned if you stared too long. When Ragnar asked why, the boy said, "They forget faster this way." "Who?" Ragnar asked. The boy looked up. "You." Era hunted alone. She didn't tell anyone when she left. She didn't wave when she returned. She cleaned her blade slower now. Not because it was dull, because every time she wiped it. She remembered the girl in the mirror, the one who had called her name. And she didn't know why that mattered, only that it did. Athelstan returned to the chapel, the one they had once found in ruins near the woods. He sat on the same stone, held the same torn book, spoke the same prayer. But this time, he answered himself, not with words, with questions. Did we wake it, or did it wake us? Halvard stood at the border of the trees. Every dusk, torch in one hand, sword in the other. He didn't patrol, he waited. When Ragnar joined him one evening, they said nothing, for an hour. Then Halvard finally asked, "What if they've already won?" Ragnar stared into the dark. "Then, we live in the ruins." The fires in the village burned low. Someone added green wood. Smoke rolled thick, people coughed, some wept, no one left. Because leaving would mean accepting this was real. And no one was ready for that, not yet. Ragnar sat alone, back to the stone where the mouth had once stood. It was gone now, vanished, but the ground still remembered. He ran his hand over the earth, felt the heat. Felt the shape, felt the presence. It wasn't gone, only buried. And what's buried? Waits. The wind picked up at dawn, carried no ash, no scent. Only sound, a faint whisper, not from the forest, from the ground beneath it. It said soon. It began with a crack, soft, distant, like a branch bending wrong beneath snow, but there was no snow. And the sound came from below. The villagers woke with a chill they couldn't name. Fires still burned. Goats still bleated, children still dreamed, but something was off. Not broken, shifted, like a table set wrong but only by a finger's width. Ragnar heard it first, not the sound, the absence, birdsong, wind, footsteps, gone, replaced by something slower, something under things. He walked to the center of the village, stood on the spot where the stone used to be. The soil was cracked, only slightly, but deep. He knelt, placed his ear to the dirt, and heard breathing. Athelstan found a ring of ash outside the barn. Perfect circle. Unburned wood at the center, no footprints leading to it. He said nothing, just knelt and whispered, "We didn't finish it. We only delayed it." Ira began sharpening arrows, more than she needed. Floki made torches soaked in bloodroot. They burned hotter, redder. He didn't say why. He didn't need to. Everyone had begun to feel it. The itch of something returning. Something that had never really gone. Halvard drew a new map in the dirt. It looked the same. But he kept changing the center, moving it, over and over. Until Ragnar walked past and said, "It's not a place. Halvard stopped. Then what? A hunger. That night, the boy didn't sleep. He sat at the edge of the village, eyes closed, hands shaking. He muttered names, none of them known, none of them human. Ragnar sat beside him, asked nothing, just listened. Until finally, the boy opened his eyes. They're building something. Where? Under us. The next day, the well turned black. Not muddy, not poisoned, just dark. Too dark, no reflection, no bottom. When a man dropped a stone in, there was no sound, just silence. And then, a ripple in the bucket beside him. No one touched it. No one explained it. They just stopped drinking. Floki approached Ragnar. His hands were red with sap, his eyes brighter than usual. He said, "I think the trees are listening again," Ragnar answered. I don't think they ever stopped. That evening, the earth cracked wider. Not loud, not violent, but clean, like skin splitting along an old scar. A hole opened near the goat pens, shallow, round, inside it, teeth. Not bones, teeth, in a perfect circle, rooted in stone. Ragnar stared. "They're not coming from the forest anymore," Era said. "No. They're waking up beneath us." The villagers gathered in silence. No one asked what it meant. They already knew. Some began packing. Some sharpened steel, some just wept. Because it was no longer a question of if, it was a question of when. And the ground beneath their feet had already answered. The crack spread, each hour a little wider, a little deeper. Like the earth was remembering something it wanted to forget, or someone. Ragnar marked it with stones, not to stop it, to measure it. Because some wounds don't bleed, they spread. Floki placed his hand inside. Just once. When he pulled it back, the tips of his fingers were blackened, burned without fire. He laughed, still warm. Ragnar said nothing. Ira stopped hunting, not out of fear, out of instinct. Predators know when something worse is hunting them. She stayed near the forge. Sharpened blades she didn't plan to use. Her eyes stayed on the ground. As if she expected the fight to come from below. She was right. The boy had begun drawing circles again, but this time not mouths, not eyes, doors. He scratched them into every wall, every tree, every piece of dry earth he could find. When asked why, he said, to remind them which side they're on. No one knew who them was. No one asked again. Athelstan stood in the chapel. It had cracked too. The altar split. The roof sagged. The book he once read from gone. Replaced by a stone. No writing, just heat. He placed his hands on it and whispered the only prayer he remembered. "Don't let me be part of this." The stone did not answer, but the wind blew the door open, and from outside came ash. Halvard posted sentries around the fire circle. Each man rotated after an hour. By midnight, 2 had vanished. No screams. No blood, just missing. He didn't replace them. He just stood in their place and whispered the names of every man he'd ever buried, until he forgot one, and couldn't remember if that man had ever lived at all. Ragnar sat at the center. The villagers watched him. Some in hope, some in doubt. He gave no orders. He didn't need to. Because this fight wasn't one he could lead. It was one they would all meet together, or not at all. At dawn, the earth groaned, not cracked, not trembled, groaned. Like something turning in sleep. The ground beneath the village pulsed once, just once. Every lantern died, every dog howled, and then silence. When the light returned, it wasn't the same. Sunlight bent around the trees. Shadows stretched wrong, colors faded, rocks felt warm, and every breath tasted like memory. Ragnar stood. He looked at the villagers, then at the ground, and said, "It's coming." Floki nodded. "No, it's here." The sky didn't change, but everything under it did. Grass turned gray. Stones sweated, trees bent without wind. No one said a word, because everyone knew. This was the moment they hadn't prepared for. Ragnar stood at the center of the village, alone, but not separate. He didn't raise his voice. didn't raise his weapon, only looked toward the hill. And waited. The earth opened, not cracked, opened, like a mouth remembering how to speak. And from it, fog. Breathing. Thick, it rolled toward the village like a tide, not fast, but final. Athelstan grabbed the children, led them to the stone barn. He didn't pray. Only counted, their faces, their names, so he could remember, in case the world forgot. Ira drew her blade. The edge shimmered, not from light, from memory. She whispered to it, "Don't fail me now." And the sword answered by staying warm in her grip. Halvard didn't speak. He simply knelt, drew 3 circles in the dirt, one for his village, one for the dead, and one for the thing he could not name. Floki smeared ash across his face, not as war paint, as truth. He smiled, then laughed, then wept. He said, "If they want a mouth, it'll give them teeth." The fog reached the first fence. It didn't burn it, didn't break it. It passed through, and everything it touched forgot itself. Wood bent inward. Rocks sank into the soil. One by one, the torches died, not extinguished. Unremembered, then a shape. Not walking, not crawling, just becoming. It rose from the fog like a question too big to ask. No eyes, no mouth, no hands, only presence, and a sound like old wood breaking underwater. It didn't speak, but Ragnar heard it, in his ribs, in his scars. In the spaces between breaths, he stepped forward, one step, then another. The villagers didn't stop him, because this had always been his path. He stood before the thing, no fear, no weapon. "Only his name," he said. "You came for us, the thing didn't move." But the fog coiled closer. He asked, "What are you?" It pulsed once, and Ragnar heard, "I am what's left when gods forget their own stories." He nodded, then said, "We remember." The thing paused, not disappeared, drew inward, into the earth, into stone, into silence. The fog pulled back, like breath exhaled, and what remained was stillness, but not peace. Ragnar turned, looked at his people, then at the cracked ground. He said, "It wasn't victory," Halvard answered, "but it wasn't surrender." That night the fires burned again, lower, quieter. But they burned. Children laughed again, soft, unsure, but true. And above the hill, no fog, only stars. Floki sat near the tree line, carving again, a new symbol. Not a mouth, not a sword, a circle with a single line through it. Athelstan sat beside him. "What does it mean?" Floki smiled. Ragnar didn't sleep. Balance. He stood on the same hill as before. Watched the village breathe, then whispered, "We're still here." And for once, the wind said nothing, because it didn't need to.